In a move that shook the international stage, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's resolute leader, boldly refused former U.S. President Donald Trump's unprecedented demand for 60% of the country's gold and oil resources. This was no ordinary diplomatic disagreement. It was a defiant stand by a young African leader against what many saw as a modern form of economic colonization. The demand came as Trump pushed aggressively to secure a massive share of Burkina Faso's natural wealth, claiming it was part of a strategic partnership. But Traoré saw it differently, as an unjust exploitation that would rob his people of their rightful prosperity. Standing firm, Traoré declared, "Our resources belong to the people of Burkina Faso. We will not surrender our wealth to foreign interests." This bold refusal marked one of the most powerful rejections of Western pressure by an African leader in recent memory. It sent ripples across the continent, inspiring other nations to reconsider their own resource agreements and foreign partnerships. As tensions rose, the world watched closely. Would Burkina Faso face economic sanctions? Would Trump escalate his demands? Or would Traoré's courage spark a new wave of African self-determination? The international community reacted swiftly. Western powers, taken aback by Traoré's refusal, began whispers of economic retaliation. Some analysts predicted a blockade or freezing of Burkina Faso's foreign accounts. But Traoré remained unfazed, rallying his government and people around a vision of sovereignty and self-reliance. Inside Burkina Faso, the rejection ignited a surge of national pride. Citizens flooded the streets, waving flags and chanting slogans celebrating their leader's courage. For decades, foreign companies had extracted wealth with little benefit to ordinary Burkinabés. Now, Traoré promised a new era, one where the nation controlled its destiny. Behind the scenes, Traoré quietly launched a secret project to modernize the country's mining and oil industries. Instead of selling raw resources cheaply to foreign buyers, Burkina Faso would build local processing plants, create jobs, and add value to its exports. This move angered many international corporations used to easy profits. Some diplomats tried to pressure Traoré, offering deals, threats, and incentives. But he stayed firm, saying, "We are tired of being told what to do. Our resources will fuel our people's future, not foreign coffers." Meanwhile, whispers spread of secret alliances forming between Burkina Faso and emerging powers like China, Russia, and some African nations, all eager to challenge Western dominance. The story of Traoré's bold defiance was far from over. With his nation's future hanging in the balance, every move he made was watched, scrutinized, and debated on the global stage. As weeks turned into months, the pressure on Burkina Faso intensified. Western governments imposed selective sanctions targeting key officials and blocked several international transactions, aiming to isolate the country economically. Yet, these measures only strengthened the resolve of Traoré and his administration. They doubled down on efforts to diversify the economy and build strategic partnerships beyond the traditional powers. Traoré's government announced ambitious infrastructure projects funded by domestic revenues and new foreign investments from China and Russia. Roads, railways, and refineries began to rise where none had existed before, promising not just economic growth, but also employment for thousands of Burkinabés. The youth, once disillusioned and prone to migration, found hope in the new vision. National service programs were launched, encouraging young people to participate in community building and resource management. Schools started teaching courses on economic independence and the importance of protecting national assets. Internationally, the narrative was shifting. Some Western media painted Traoré as reckless and stubborn, warning of economic collapse. But many African leaders and citizens praised him as a symbol of resistance against neocolonialism. His story spread across social media, becoming a rallying cry for countries tired of unfair resource deals. In diplomatic corridors, new negotiations began. Traoré leveraged Burkina Faso's position to form a coalition of African nations demanding fairer trade agreements and greater control over their natural wealth. This alliance, dubbed the Sovereign Resources Pact, quickly gained momentum, threatening to reshape Africa's economic landscape. Meanwhile, inside Burkina Faso, life was not without challenges. The sanctions affected imports of certain goods, leading to short-term hardships. But the government's focus on local production and innovation started to pay off. Small businesses flourished, agriculture received new investments, and energy projects using Burkina Faso's own resources brought power to rural areas. Faced with these successes, some Western powers reconsidered their stance. Quiet back-channel talks hinted at possible compromises, but Traoré remained cautious. He made it clear that any agreement must prioritize the people's welfare over foreign profits. At home, Traoré's popularity soared. His speeches, often broadcast live on national radio, inspired a generation. "Our land, our future," he would say, reminding everyone that true independence meant control over one's destiny. Yet the battle was far from over. The global powers that once dictated terms were regrouping. Economic pressures, political intrigue, and covert operations began surfacing, testing Traoré's leadership and Burkina Faso's resilience. But through it all, the captain remained steady. His vision for a free and prosperous Burkina Faso, governed by its own people and for its own people, was unwavering. The world was witnessing the rise of a new kind of leadership in Africa, one that dared to say no, one that chose dignity over submission. And this was just the beginning. As the sovereign resources pact gained traction, neighboring countries began to take notice. Some, inspired by Burkina Faso's boldness, joined the coalition, demanding renegotiations of their own resource contracts. Others, wary of Western backlash, hesitated. But the movement was unstoppable, signaling a shift in Africa's power dynamics. Within Burkina Faso, the government faced new internal challenges. Some elites, who had long profited from cozy ties with foreign corporations, grew restless. Secret meetings and whispered plots emerged as they sought to undermine Traoré's reforms. However, the captain's popularity among the people and loyalty within the military kept these factions in check. Meanwhile, the economic sanctions evolved into cyberattacks targeting Burkina Faso's emerging digital infrastructure. The nation's cybersecurity teams, quickly assembled, fought back with resilience. International tech partners, especially from non-Western countries, offered assistance, further deepening Burkina Faso's alliances outside the traditional Western sphere. Traoré used every setback as an opportunity. He launched a nationwide campaign promoting self-sufficiency, urging citizens to buy local products and support homegrown industries. Schools, universities, and vocational centers aligned their programs with this vision, teaching skills in mining, energy, agriculture, and technology. The media war intensified. Western outlets framed Traoré as reckless, risking the country's future. But African and global independent media painted him as a visionary, a leader rewriting the rules of engagement between Africa and the West. Behind closed doors, negotiations continued. Western governments, alarmed by the growing unity among African resource-rich countries, proposed softened demands. Traoré listened but made clear, "No more unequal deals. Our resources will serve our people first." On the global stage, Burkina Faso became a symbol of resistance and hope. International organizations invited Traoré to speak at forums, where he articulated a new vision of global economic justice, challenging centuries-old power imbalances. Despite the mounting pressure, Traoré maintained a grounded approach. He met regularly with community leaders, farmers, miners, and youth representatives, ensuring his policies reflected the people's needs. This grassroots connection fueled his legitimacy and kept morale high. As months passed, Burkina Faso's economic indicators began to improve. Gold and oil revenues stayed within the country, funding healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Rural electrification projects expanded, and new hospitals opened. The country, once dependent and vulnerable, was now charting its own path. But threats remained. Western powers explored covert means to destabilize the government through economic manipulation, political sabotage, and disinformation campaigns. Traoré and his inner circle worked tirelessly to safeguard national unity. One night, intelligence reports warned of an imminent plot to create unrest in the capital. The military acted swiftly, thwarting attempts to spark violence. Traoré addressed the nation, calling for calm and unity. "We will not let outsiders divide us." The people rallied behind their leader, stronger than ever. International observers recognized Burkina Faso as a beacon of African sovereignty and resilience. Traoré's defiance was no longer just a story of one man or one nation. It had sparked a continental awakening. Across Africa, nations began rewriting their stories, embracing control over their wealth, rejecting exploitation, and reclaiming dignity. The world was changing, and Burkina Faso was leading the charge. With the country firmly behind him, Traoré moved to cement Burkina Faso's new era by launching the Golden Future Initiative, a sweeping national development plan focused on sustainable growth. The initiative prioritized clean energy projects powered by the nation's own resources, modernizing agriculture with technology, and building schools and hospitals in underserved regions. To fund this ambitious vision, Traoré turned to friendly nations eager to support African-led progress. China agreed to finance a state-of-the-art refinery and a transnational railway connecting Burkina Faso to coastal ports, enabling direct export routes that bypassed traditional Western-controlled channels. Russia offered technical expertise in mining and energy extraction, while emerging African economies pledged investment partnerships. Meanwhile, the Sovereign Resources Pact evolved into a political bloc with a unified voice in international forums such as the African Union and the United Nations. Traoré's leadership helped shape new trade policies that favored fair deals and encouraged intra-African commerce, reducing dependency on former colonial powers. Back home, the new wealth began transforming everyday life. Farmers accessed modern equipment and irrigation, boosting crop yields. Young entrepreneurs launched startups in tech and renewable energy. Hospitals received upgraded equipment, reducing infant mortality and improving healthcare outcomes. Schools flourished with new libraries and digital classrooms. But success bred envy and fear. Western powers, facing diminishing influence and profits, stepped up covert efforts to destabilize the region. Disinformation campaigns sought to discredit Traoré, painting him as authoritarian and reckless. Sabotage attempts targeted key infrastructure projects. Even some regional politicians, tempted by foreign promises, conspired against the government. In response, Traoré bolstered national security, modernizing intelligence services and strengthening alliances with trustworthy neighbors. He engaged community leaders to foster national unity and launched a nationwide media campaign promoting transparency and participation. One fateful evening, as Traoré prepared to deliver a keynote address at the African Union Summit, news broke of a planned coup attempt by a faction within the military, allegedly backed by foreign interests. The plotters aimed to seize control, reverse reforms, and reopen the door to exploitative foreign deals. Alerted in time, Traoré acted decisively. Loyal forces arrested the conspirators, and the nation held its breath as tensions soared. In a powerful televised speech, Traoré called for calm, unity, and vigilance against those who sought to undermine progress. "Our journey is not without trials," he said, "but our commitment to freedom and dignity is unbreakable." The coup's failure strengthened Traoré's position. He used the crisis to deepen reforms, improving military professionalism and expanding civic education programs to build resilience against manipulation. Internationally, the failed coup exposed the lengths some powers would go to preserve control over African resources. Public outcry grew, forcing some Western governments to reconsider their policies. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso's economy continued its upward trajectory. With greater control over its gold and oil, the country invested heavily in education, technology, and healthcare, reducing poverty rates dramatically. Infrastructure projects connected rural communities, fostering trade and mobility. Traoré's vision for a sovereign, prosperous Burkina Faso was becoming reality, a beacon of hope and strength in a continent hungry for change. The world watched as a new chapter in African history was being written. It was a story of courage, resilience, and the unyielding will to claim what rightfully belonged to the people. And through every challenge, Traoré stood firm, a captain leading his nation toward a brighter, freer future. As Burkina Faso flourished under Traoré's leadership, The ripple effects of his bold stance on resource sovereignty spread across Africa and beyond. Other nations began renegotiating unfair deals, inspired by Burkina Faso's example to take control of their own destinies. The continent's natural wealth was no longer a source of exploitation but a foundation for shared prosperity. Traoré's journey was not without sacrifice and struggle. He faced threats, betrayals, and hardships that tested his resolve. Yet, his unwavering commitment to his people's future proved stronger than any external pressure. In the end, Burkina Faso emerged as a symbol of hope, a nation that dared to say no to exploitation and yes to self-determination. True leadership demands courage to stand firm against injustice, even when powerful forces oppose you.